The police called and said that we have somebody here that we think might... Are you missing a child?
When they got the phone call, I just remember hearing them screaming.
Back in '79, the 28th of March, I believe it was around 2 in the morning, passerby discovers a body of a female on the side of the road in the 700 block of Red Bluff. Her hands were bound behind her back.
I just didn't understand how that can happen.
A rope around her neck, she'd been strangled.
And I cried and I cried.
You're young and you don't think anything's going to happen to you at 5 o'clock on a sunny day.
Did she meet up with somebody? That's kind of a working theory. It's did she meet up with someone that she knew, and whatever transpired went sideways, so to speak.
When people do this, they're not just killing a person.
She had to suffer.
They're hurting a lot of people.
And they had to watch her suffer, and they were there, and they couldn't stop.
Causes damage to a lot of people.
They didn't have to do this.
Hey, sir. Are you Bobby? I'm Courtney.
What was the outcome for them? What were they getting out of this? She was such a nice person. There was no reason to do this.
Why the dirt on the pants? Was she killed in Midtown and then transported? Was she transported from Midtown to somewhere, killed there, and then, all those things, and, those are those unknowns that make these cold cases difficult.
I'm mad because they've gotten to live their life, possibly, and she didn't. I don't know if they felt guilt or if they felt bad or they've given her a second thought. I've not stopped thinking of her for 43 years.
Angela Kelley had been found on the side of this 2-lane road. She had been strangled, her wrists tied behind her back with electrical wire. She was just 17 years old. A heartbroken mother, a best friend who blamed herself, and police interviewing everyone from old boyfriends to serial killers. And that wire could be the key to solving this case gone cold. I'm Courtney Fisher, and this is Unsolved.
The bond between Angela Kelley and Sandra Beasley was one you get with very few people in this life. More sisters than friends, really. That's Angela on the left, the goofy one, but only around Sandra, because that's when Angela could be herself.
She was a firecracker. In my eyes, she was adventuresome. She liked to do lots of things.
Whatever they do, it was almost always together. Angela was 2 years older than Sandra in high school, and it didn't matter. They connected over their love of art, drawing specifically. Angela was quite the artist. The girls spent most weekends at Sandra's house. Saturday nights usually spent catching a live show.
She loved music. She loved concerts. Rock and roll. Yeah, that time. Heart, Led Zeppelin, Peter Frampton.
That laugh, you feel Sandra remembering Angela when she laughs. Remembering their secrets, their stories. And only a way a best friend, a sister, can. To Sandra, Angela was family.
Her mom was from Germany, and she was from here. And her dad lived in Orange, Texas. So there was just kind of a lot of disconnect there. So she was close to my mom and dad.
Angela always was over at Sandra's, and I understood why that was, because we really didn't have a family. We were a mom and 3 kids. You see, I was the head of the house. I was the one that brought the money home and worked all day. There was nothing for those children.
A single mom raising Angela and her 2 siblings, Bridget Body was a tough German woman, 5,000 miles away from her family in a foreign country with not a lot of help.
I did what I could, and I felt I always had everything under control, but not a home life. There was no home life. I didn't have time to ask any of my kids, well, what did you do? Did you have a nice day? It just didn't happen that way.
Yeah.
Which is why Angela and Sandra were inseparable when they found each other.
You don't come across that very often. I mean, we were 16, 17 years old, and when we parted ways, it was a hug and I love you. You don't do that. They didn't do that back then.
Back then was 1978, when the girls worked the summer together at Astroworld, Houston's amusement park that saw its heyday in the 70s.
And that was a fun job. You'd meet guys during the day, and then you'd meet them at the park later after you got off work, and just ride around on the rides and stuff.
It's like the ultimate 70s Houston summer.
Yes, it was the best summer.
The summer before everything changed.
I believe it was around 2 in the morning. Passerby discovers a body, a female, on the side of the road in the 700 block of Red Bluff.
A warning, these crime scene photos are tough. Near the bridge, above a muddy bayou, her body lay on a curb, knees bent towards the sky.
At first, the reportee didn't realize what it was that he saw at 2 in the morning going down there. And back in 79, Red Bluff was pretty dark and remote.
A young woman dead on the side of the road. The thighs of her blue Levi's stained with what appeared to be dirt, her white gauzy shirt above her ribs. Police say the white rope around her neck had left a burn mark under her jaw. Thick gray electric wire was wrapped and knotted around her wrists. It was Angela Kelley, murdered. But at 2:45 a.m. when Pasadena police took these photos, they didn't know it was her. She had no ID, no purse. Investigators documented the crime scene, photographing the road, and that brown Chevy truck with shag interior belonging to the man who first drove up on Angela's lifeless body. Officers collected evidence, noting Angela's broken fingernails and, tangled in her long auburn hair, seed tassels from what looked like a willow tree, plus a cellophane wrapper like the plastic over a pack of cigarettes. Detectives interviewed the driver who first found Angela, and according to his statement, the Air Force vet said he was on his way home from work and swerved to miss her body.
Everything from what the investigators, through his statement, through work history and so forth, ruled him out.
He was never a suspect. And the vet said he didn't see anyone around except for a man driving the opposite way in a black Chevy pickup. As police finished up the interview, a call came in. An officer had found something about 6 miles west of Angela's body, a white Toyota Corolla, abandoned on the side of the road.
What was of interest was what's inside his vehicle.
Electric wire found in his vehicle, right?
Correct. And so they processed the entire car, again, for prints. They weren't doing DNA back then. So they processed wire, Pepsi bottles, collected hair from the vehicle.
Inside that Corolla, a pair of wire cutters and a brown paper bag with copper wire. Investigators ran the plates and discovered something interesting, McGregor says. Those plates came back to a different car, and both cars were registered to the same man, Earl Leroy Weaver. Police towed the Toyota, made note to talk with Weaver, and turned their focus back to the girl. What Pasadena police didn't yet know was that a fisherman crabbing under a bridge along the San Jacinto River earlier that very day found a white wallet and a red Bible with the name Angela Kelley written inside. It was more than 10 miles from where Angela's body was found. The crabber had tracked down Angela's family and spoke to a worried older sister, Cynthia Kelley, and Angela's mother, Bridget. The family hadn't seen Angela in about 24 hours. Angela's brother, Andrew, was 10 years old at the time.
When they got the phone call, I just remember hearing them screaming. I didn't know what was going on, but obviously soon found out,
Andrew remembers Cynthia called Houston police, who by then had heard Pasadena police were trying to identify the murdered girl found on Red Bluff Road. Houston detectives asked the mother and daughter to come to the department.
I was just stunned. I couldn't really speak.
That's something no mother should have to go through or see, to identify
as far as I'm concerned, my entire life's been one you shouldn't have to go through, because I had nobody's help, no one to turn to for questions, nobody.
I can't even imagine. You know, yeah, as a parent, you know, it's not really something that you can even, you know, fathom.
The medical examiner determined Angela had been strangled and beaten in the head.
Yeah, I see it. Of course, I normally don't let these thoughts in there. Whoosh, out. But the whole time we were driving home and Cynthia was in the back seat, I did nothing but cry. I just didn't understand how that can happen. And I cried and I cried.
How does a 10-year-old even process that? Somebody killed your sister.
Yeah.
Strangled her.
Yeah. I don't really remember how I dealt with it. Yeah, it almost didn't seem real.
The days that followed were a blur for Angela's family. Planning a funeral, grappling with grief, questions from investigators.
I was not functioning, really. All I did was stand around and cry.
I remember her mom calling and asking about what I thought about the dress for her to wear. I remember it raining. I remember her mom being really, really sad. And helping her mom pick out the music. Stairway to Heaven. And then I did it my way.
There were a tremendous amount of people in that church for this funeral. But I couldn't look at anything, you know, I just wanted to crawl in a hole. The tears were just going, I had no control.
The really sad part was seeing how sad her mom was and that she never got to feel that with her mom.
As family and friends said goodbye, police kept working, studying evidence, trying to learn from it, and interviewing the people who saw Angela last.
How important are those first few hours for detectives as far as talking to her friends, establishing a timeline?
Oh, it's critical.
Sandra was one of those people.
I could see the apartment. I could see where the restroom was. I can hear her voice still to this day.
She's replayed the 24 hours before Angela's murder over and over. The last day with her best friend, the decisions they made.
It's a lonely thing. It's a lonely feeling. It's a lonely feeling that you can't close your eyes and wish it back a week ago.
Wishing she hadn't let Angela walk alone to that pawn shop.
I spent 43 years thinking if I'd just driven her, it could have changed the trajectory of all kinds of things.
When school let out that Tuesday, Sandra says Angela agreed to go with her to her doctor's appointment in downtown Houston.
I don't remember asking, just it was a given, you know. Want to be there to support me, and that's what we did.
An hour later, the best friends drove to where Sandra's boyfriend, Scott Dodge, was staying. According to the police report at the time, Scott explained to investigators that he was living at a halfway house. Angela had asked where the closest pawn shop was. Scott said the three of them looked through the yellow pages and found one just under 2 miles away, about a 40-minute walk.
And so she left to go. This is where it gets hard because I didn't offer to take her. I didn't insist on driving her. And you know, it's one of those regrets that you live the rest of your life with. Because you're young and you don't think anything's going to happen to you at 5 o'clock on a sunny day. And so she headed off.
Angela wanted to pawn jewelry to pay for a bus ticket to see her boyfriend, police say. His name was Tony Wells. Tony had moved to Rogers, Arkansas 3 weeks earlier. The two had only known each other for a few months, but Angela was smitten. In a love letter to Tony dated 6 days before she was found dead, Angela writes, "Love you. I sure wish you would write me at least one letter every 3 days." She tells him about the Rocky Horror movie review she was writing for her school paper, promising to bring it to him soon. Soon was the next week, according to the plan in Angela's notebook. And in that same journal, police found a list of what to pack: clothes, passport, birth certificate. There was an inventory of jewelry, possible prices of what Angela hoped to sell it for, above a drawing of Arkansas and Texas, with the route and bus schedule from Houston to Rogers.
She was determined she was going to go where he is, okay?
If she wanted to do something, she was going to do it. She put her mind to it, she was going to do it.
Yeah.
She was so in love with him that she felt this was her future. He was her future.
Sandra and Scott told police Angela left the halfway house a little after 5 p.m. According to the police report, police asked Scott, what was Angela's mood like? He told them she seemed subdued, almost to the point of being depressed, saying she just didn't seem like herself. And he said he didn't know why. Scott also told investigators Angela said something along the lines of, if she was not back in 2 hours, come find her. When Angela hadn't returned 3 hours later, they went looking.
We went to quite a few different locations, and nobody had seen her.
That night, Sandra didn't sleep. Her best friend was missing. She didn't know what to do.
This was the last thing that I ever thought could have happened to her. I couldn't think of anybody that would ever hurt her, or why they would ever want to hurt her.
Between the time Angela left Scott's apartment and the time she was found dead on Red Bluff Road, police say no one ever reported seeing the teen. According to the police report, there was no record of an Angela Kelley pawning anything at Shaw's.
Did she meet up with somebody? You know, that's kind of a working theory. It's like, did she meet up with someone that she knew, and whatever transpired went sideways, so to speak? You know, did something go afoul?
Investigators needed to track down Angela's boyfriend. Did Tony Wells know anything? According to the police report, detectives spoke with Tony 6 days after Angela's murder. He said he'd been in Rogers, Arkansas for the past 3 weeks working and hadn't returned to Houston, not even for Angela's funeral. In the report, investigators noted that while Tony said, yeah, Angela was his girlfriend, he did not appear to be very upset at the thought of her death. And there's this peculiar detail in the report. Tony told police he last talked to Angela on the phone about her upcoming visit on April 1st. But that would have been impossible. Angela was murdered 4 days earlier.
Is that like a typo, or was that a question posed and the investigator didn't catch it and didn't have a follow-up question to it? If he did he not document it? Because I'm not reading it. Things like that raise a flag to me, and where I would want to follow up on that.
But he can't, because Tony died in 1991. That phone call in 1979 was the only time police spoke to Tony about the case.
Is there any kind of explanation why that was the only time they talked with him?
Yeah, I don't know as far as the conversation itself, if it lent for any further follow-up with them at the time. They were able to alibi his whereabouts at the time and then just moved on from it.
Would you want to have talked to him more? Would you have liked to see more investigation done on him?
Definitely now. I mean, I understand it at the time. A lot goes on, and it's my personal experience of working cases and stuff. You try to alibi people as you go. Doesn't mean that you can't circle back around to them. He definitely was a person to be recontacted.
Was he ever considered a person of interest, truly?
From the documents, it didn't appear so.
It was just always that something inside that just wasn't comfortable with him. And I never hung out with him very often, the two of them together. And I think that's why she didn't want me to She was afraid I was going to not say something to him or not like him, and she wanted him so bad to be her man or her guy.
In a journal entry dated 10 days before her death, Angela writes about Tony. I love him still, and I don't know why. What Tony was going to give me, it sounded so beautiful. I want it. Then, I am afraid I'm not going to make it in life. I will probably just be a nobody. I miss Tony so much. Angela loved hard, that was clear.
She'd take this shirt off and give it to you if you were cold. She'd take her shoes off and give them to you if your feet were hurting. So there wasn't any reason for somebody to do this.
But someone did. Was it someone Angela knew, or a crime of opportunity committed by a stranger? And what about that white Toyota Corolla? Remember, it was found by police, abandoned 6 miles from the crime scene. We told you it belonged to a man named Earl Weaver. Well, investigators talked to Weaver the day after Angela's murder. According to the police report, he said he broke down the day before while bringing a friend home. And 2 people later verified that to officers.
Those other individuals, if Weaver was involved, they would have to be complicit across the board to cover for him.
Which didn't appear to have been possible, McGregor says. As for the wrong license plates on the car, police reported Weaver told them he took the tags off his Ford and put them on the Toyota.
I don't know why there wasn't more follow-up to that. It was from another car that he owned, but they never really elaborate, why did you switch the plates? It struck a flag to me. It's like, why are we changing the plate?
Yeah, if that question was so critical, why don't you think it was asked?
I don't know. I mean, answer for them. He may have told them then, and it just wasn't documented or put on paper.
If you were to find him today, is that something you would ask
yeah.
first?
It's one of the things of a handful to be asked of him.
For months, we tried to find Weaver. Went to last known addresses, looked for relatives. No trace of him. Police say they can't find him either, though they think he could still be in the area. What about the wire cutters and the bag of copper wire found in the car? You see it in the evidence photos. Police asked Earl about it, and according to their report, Earl told them as a sheetrock hanger he collected scrap wire from new homes he worked in and later sold the copper. According to the police report, fingerprints were found on the brown paper bag, but they weren't Angela's. The report says nothing specifically about testing the copper wires. The gray wire used to bind Angela's wrists were shown to lab techs.
So this is what was wrapped around her wrist to bind her.
This wire, still preserved in the evidence envelope. Back in '79, investigators noted the lab tech was shown this wire and the white cord found around Angela's neck and said there was nothing he could do with these items unless similar wire or cord were later found, which could be compared. The copper wire wasn't similar to the gray wire.
I wonder what she was thinking in those moments when she was being tied up with that wire.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's the sobering part of it, you know.
There was testing done on other items. Police collected hair from Earl's Corolla and, along with strands of Angela's hair, submitted the samples to the state crime lab. Would they be a match? Could Angela have been in Earl's car? Police also submitted dirt samples from the Toyota floor and trunk and dirt from the bridge where her Bible and wallet were found to be compared with the stain on her jeans.
These are her jeans, and if we unfolded them, then we would see what you saw in the crime scene photos, that mud that's on the front quad of the thigh and so forth.
Had Angela been attacked by the bridge before she was dumped on Red Bluff Road? If she was attacked, surely she would have fought it, clawed and scraped. Her fingernails were sent to the lab, too. Police were hoping to find something, anything, maybe tissue under Angela's nails, but no one else's DNA was found there. The hair, the jeans, the fingernails, all tested, all analyzed, and in the end, nothing to move the case forward. According to the lab report, the stain on Angela's jeans appeared to be soil, but there wasn't enough of it to compare it to the dirt collected from the floor and trunk of Earl Weaver's Corolla and to the soil found under the bridge. Tests were simply inconclusive, and Angela's hair did not match the strands found in Weaver's car.
Angela is in no way linked to his car.
No, not to the car. Correct.
Earl Weaver is currently not a suspect in Angela Kelley's murder. Sure, finding his abandoned car certainly raised some questions, and investigators today do want to talk with him.
He's a person of interest in the sense of just location and his vehicle and the contents of it. But on the flip side, I mean, the investigators corroborated his story with 2 other people.
Aside from where Weaver's car was abandoned, there were other locations that interested police. That bridge along the San Jacinto River. Why were Angela's Bible and wallet found there? It was about 20 miles north of where her body was left. Not far, as it turns out, from a spot where 2 other women were found murdered. The Highlands, an area along the San Jacinto River, straight east of Houston. 2 women were found strangled. Like Angela, their bodies dumped here 8 months earlier. Week 1 into investigating Angela Kelley's murder, Pasadena police got a call from sheriff's deputies who worked the 2 other murder cases, and Pasadena detectives made the connection. Angela's stuff was found about a mile downstream from where those women were left. Police noted in their report, if anything were thrown in the water, it might drift down to the location where Angela's billfold and Bible were found. Police also observed several trees which had dropped seedlings very similar to the seedlings found in Angela's hair.
Are they able to do anything like test the seedlings from her hair compared to what was found on the property? Was there anything beyond just observing it and noting it in the report, do you know?
You could do a comparison. Theirs was more visual. The issue with that is it something that's indigenous to here, that particular plant, which it is, or that particular tree or the seedling that's produced. It's up and down Jacinto River. The detectives do their due diligence in trying to at least, it got them to that point, and then it was, let's look into the Greenwoods.
The 2 brothers who strangled the 2 other women had already been caught and convicted. Billy and David Greenwood were in prison when Angela was killed, and the Greenwood family had sold the property before Angela was murdered, so none of the brothers were living there at the time. But according to the police report, the detective who investigated the deaths of the 2 women told Pasadena police he thought a 3rd brother might have been involved, but he was never able to prove it. That 3rd brother was never charged. He was questioned and cleared. Still, police searched the former Greenwood property. The woman who owned the land told police about a road that led to the river that was not secure in any manner, and said she had problems with young lovers entering her property at all hours of the night. She said if someone had driven down that road, she would have not known it. The road led police past an old barn hidden by large trees. What they found inside interested them. In the loft area, the only sign of recent activity was an empty Pall Mall cigarette carton, and nearby, 2 short lengths of white cotton cord, almost identical to the cord found around Angela Kelley's neck. Officers collected the cord and cigarette carton, but nowhere in Angela's case file did it say they were tested for anything back in '79, and investigators today can't say why.
It is crazy how similar it looks to the rope around her neck. But at the same time, this is just standard rope. It's not like you're drawing any conclusions from that.
Remember, when Angela was murdered, the Greenwoods had already sold the property. But still, police wanted to know what that 3rd brother had been up to the day Angela was killed. So they went to see his boss. Bobby Greenwood was at work the entire week, his manager told police. The boss also told investigators the company did not make or use any wire or rope similar to what was found on Angela. And according to the police report, detectives concluded no further information had been received to possibly link Bobby Greenwood to Angela's case, so they decided there was no reason to contact him. Police made note he had no criminal record. He'd never been arrested.
Are you Bobby? Yeah. I'm Courtney. I'm with ABC 13.
But we wanted to talk with him.
I'm working on a story about a cold case from 1979.
Bobby says he remembers 2 or 3 officers coming to his work to ask him about the 2 murdered women.
They kept asking me if I was involved in it.
And your response?
No, I was not involved.
We asked Bobby about Angela's death.
I had nothing to do with that.
As it related to Angela's.
McGregor says he understands why investigators looking into Angela's murder searched the old Greenwood property in '79, but there's no reason to talk with Bobby today.
I feel confident in what those investigators were able to determine or with in regards to that third brother.
2 weeks straight of investigation, and then the case stalled. Labeled inactive. No more leads. By then, Bridget was self-medicating to numb the pain.
In the morning, before going to work, I would drink 2 drinks, and at night I would drink and drink and drink until I didn't feel anymore. That went on for a long time. I couldn't cope with anything, not even me.
Lonely, isolated. Feelings that Bridget said had been chasing her most of her life, really. Certainly since she came to the U.S. from Germany as a 16-year-old newlywed in 1960, 2 decades earlier. Brought to Pasadena, Texas by her American military husband, she longed for home, for her family, then and now.
But I was so miserable because I was so far away from everything that I knew all my life. Once Angela was gone, I had hell with Cynthia because she lost her sister and she couldn't handle it. It was a nightmare, really.
Soon, the mother and her teen daughter were going out a lot, and Cynthia had turned to drinking too, Bridget says.
And I thought it was just a one-time thing, but she liked around the people, they were talking and they were alive, and I was dead to her.
Partying together instead of parenting, as Bridget remembers it. She says Cynthia started spiraling, and the family would suffer even more heartache in ways they could have never imagined.
Cynthia was a worse case than Angela.
A couple was killed early this morning when they ran in front of a police car on Westheimer. Tonight, they are still unidentified.
I was spending the night at a friend's house and actually saw, on the news about the accident. I didn't know it was her, but
29-year-old Cynthia Kelley and 20-year-old Joseph Ribovich declared dead at the scene.
my mom came and got me the next day and told me. So that was kind of weird that I saw it as everybody else sees it on the news.
Traveling about 60 miles an hour.
It's impersonal. It's just a news story, and then the next day you find out it is personal.
Nearly 4 years after Andrew Body lost one sister, he lost the other. 3 weeks after Christmas, Cynthia Kelley was crossing a busy street with a friend after a night out when a Houston police cruiser hit and killed them both. The officer responding to a call was going nearly double the 35-mile-per-hour speed limit without his emergency lights and sirens on when he crashed into the 2 friends, according to city records.
Well, I told God, that don't try to mess with me anymore. You don't do that. You should not do that. Not to people that, try to do good and try to handle everything. You did me wrong.
Fresh pain from Cynthia's death collided with the lingering grief from Angela's murder. And Bridget says she didn't have the strength left to keep asking police about either investigation. So when Henry Lee Lucas, considered to be one of the most deadly serial killers in history, confessed in May 1984 while in custody to killing Angela, it shocked everyone. Lucas told Texas Rangers he and his buddy, another noted serial killer, Otis Toole, picked up a young girl at a hamburger joint on the outskirts of Houston. Lucas said the girl agreed to have sex, then he tied her hands and feet with plastic-coated wire. She was putting up a fight because she didn't want Otis to touch her. Otis pulled her hands back over the seat and she scratched Otis on the arms. I pulled open her blouse and pulled down her pants, Lucas told the Rangers. He said Toole raped the girl. The girl still tied up in the front seat, and I reached underneath the seat and got a piece of rope which I had cut up. It was 3 strands and was kind of nylon or cotton. I put that around her neck and I strangled her until she was dead. Otis was sitting in the back seat while this was happening. During the confession, a sergeant showed Lucas a picture of Angela. I'm sure that this is the same girl I killed. I don't remember if she had the glasses on the night I killed her. I think that she was wearing a colored blouse. The day after Lucas made this confession, police told Bridget what he had said, according to Angela's case file. And after that,
God knows what I'd done and what I didn't do, you know.
The investigation seemed to stop. As of this writing, no information has been developed to confirm the confession given by Lucas. This case will remain inactive.
And all those claims that Lucas made about Toole, seems they were never investigated. There's no documentation anywhere that Toole was questioned about Angela's death. And today's investigators aren't sure why. Otis Toole was never charged in the murder of Angela. Neither was Henry Lee Lucas.
A year later, Rangers re-interviewed Lucas, this time showing him a synopsis of homicides investigators believed he committed. Specifically, pointing to a woman in Madison, Wisconsin, who was reported missing the very same day Angela was found strangled. This time, Lucas said he was positive he killed the girl in Madison, saying he had taken several articles of clothing from the victim and had given them to his girlfriend to wear. Lucas then said, according to the police report, the only explanation he could come up with for Angela's homicide was the possibility that Toole had killed her, and told Lucas about it later. But again, investigators didn't interview Toole. The case file notes Toole was to be brought to Texas in the near future, and that arrangements were being made to provide interviews with him. Until Toole can be interviewed about Angela's murder, this case will be inactive. Toole died in 1996. Police say during Lucas's lifetime, he falsely confessed to approximately 600 murders.
I didn't think it was him anyways. I just knew.
Do you think the killer knew Angela? That Angela knew her killer?
That's kind of a working theory.
You don't think she was killed by a serial killer?
You know, I couldn't say definitively. I mean,
Yeah.
that would be kind of like the, you know, because I don't even know who's responsible for it. If I knew who that person was, then we could look into, okay, what's he about?
Which is why Detective Chris McGregor keeps going back to the evidence.
This was the rope that was around her neck.
And this was basically what was used to kill her.
Correct. Yeah.
And he keeps coming back to that thick gray electrical wire wrapped around Angela's wrists. Who would have access to wire like that?
With what she was bound with, granted, it's not so, the wire itself is so unique.
So that was the knot that was
Exactly.
tied, the way it was tied.
Yeah, at some point it's cut away from the hands or even slid off.
She had to suffer. And they had to watch her suffer, and they were there, and they could have stopped. They didn't have to do this. I want to know why they did it.
In 2002, Pasadena police swabbed that gray wire and the cotton rope, resubmitted it to the crime lab for DNA analysis along with Angela's fingernail scrapings, hoping for a break. The killer's DNA? But nothing turned up on the tests. No DNA on the wire or the fingernail scrapings from her right hand, and no conclusive results from the rope or nail scrapings from her left hand. Fast forward more than a decade, 2014. DNA testing had gotten better. Again, police submitted items to get tested, this time testing Angela's own clothing for the possible killer's DNA. Her jeans, shirt, socks, shoes, underwear, and bra had inconclusive results. No DNA was found on her bra or underwear, the report shows. But this time, the rope that had been around Angela's neck tested positive for presumptive blood, though it's unclear whose blood it could be. Also, remember the white rope found on the old Greenwood property? These new tests showed no possible blood on those two cords, but there is possible trace evidence. Same goes for the gray wire wrapped around Angela's wrists. Trace evidence, or touch DNA, is microscopic, like skin cells or hair left over from something that's been touched. And now that another decade's passed, detectives are resubmitting some of these items to get tested yet again.
Because of the type of rope and so forth, it's definitely suitable for the MVAC process.
Okay.
MVAC, a machine that creates sort of a mini hurricane, which loosens DNA with water and transfers it into a collection bottle. That solution gets poured over a filter and the DNA is analyzed. Fairly new technology that McGregor thinks Angela's case is perfect for. Because if the killer touched the rope, the wire, her clothes, his DNA could still be there.
Depending on the manner that she was strangled and if it was from behind and so forth, that there's contact or sweat, something that would transferred from the suspect to her. I'm hoping MVAC picks that up.
And it should be noted, investigators say Angela had sex with someone leading up to her murder. Traces of sperm were found on her body, but they don't necessarily think she was raped. To date, police haven't been able to identify the man she was with from that sperm sample. But one thing they do know, it isn't DNA from Lucas or Toole. Their profiles are in CODIS. McGregor says by now, authorities would have been alerted if DNA from either of them matched what was found on Angela.
Outside of Lucas and his partner, I'm not aware that we've obtained DNA from any of the individuals that were interviewed back then.
It's not like no one bothered to run DNA back then, that they just didn't do it. It just wasn't possible. It wasn't.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it hadn't really started even coming into play till 6-7 years later. The technology aspect of it wasn't even in the forefront yet.
Sandra says Angela never mentioned meeting up with anyone. Tony, her boyfriend, was in Arkansas around that time.
Did she meet with somebody, have sexual intercourse, leave, and then come across somebody else? Those are the unknowns, but they're worth looking into as much as possible.
And there is one more thing. In 2016, a cold case detective noted Scott Dodge and his roommate were electrician apprentices, someone who would have access to heavy-duty electrical wire. Scott never brought that up to police in his initial interview.
You say it's not incriminating, but it is something to follow
Correct.
up on. What are you guys doing to follow up on that?
Through the interviews and so forth, he's accounted for. So you rule him out. Now, when in regards to the friend, by default, we can't do anything with him because he can't speak to us. He's deceased. And you've spoken to Dodge as well as our interviews, and we can account for him.
Scott Dodge is not a suspect.
Not currently, just based on the interviews done then.
We spoke with Scott quite a bit when we started researching Angela's case. He said he had nothing to do with her death, initially agreeing to an interview. But then Scott stopped returning our calls. Bridget, meanwhile, has waited 45 years to share her story. Thinking, grieving, wondering. Bridget has started over, left Texas for Vegas, became a grandmother, smiles again. She's found peace.
In the last 10 years, I have stopped killing that killer. I have killed him so often and ripped his face apart and pulled all his teeth. You have no idea what I did to that man, okay? I have gotten tremendous satisfaction from the relief I got that even though I didn't really do it, I took that guy apart. And I know it was just a way of relieving myself, but they haven't really looked or paid attention or taken it serious.
I've been doing this for a long time, and I've sat with those families and tried to stress that to them, that we are doing everything we can, and unfortunately, they may not feel that same way.
If he's still alive, I might get me a revolver and kill him. But then that brings nobody back.
You laugh a lot in talking about these really tough issues.
Well, I don't have a choice. It's laughable that all that can do something like, get something like that all alone without anybody. And I can't change it. I can't change it.
You think about it, when people do this, you know, they're not just killing a person. They're hurting a lot of people.
That ripple effect.
Yeah, it's not an isolated event that has no impact, you know, outside of the event. It you know, causes damage to a lot of people.
I'm mad because they've gotten to live their life, possibly. And she didn't. You know, I don't know if they felt guilt or if they felt bad or they've given her a second thought. I've not stopped thinking of her for 43 years. And I want it solved so bad. I have for so long. I just feel like it is. I feel like we're just that one hair away from solving it.
Sandra often thinks about the life that would have been if her best friend was still here, her sister, that goofy girl in the photos. Her sons grew up hearing about Angela.
They've known of Angela since they were little.
But they never got to meet her.
No.
She would have been a part of your life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She would have been a wonderful aunt to them.
Sandra's learned to make peace with what happened. But what you'll never understand is why. Why her Angela? The happy-go-lucky girl who loved to write and draw and make people smile, whose murder on Red Bluff Road created a ripple effect of pain.
Not that I'll ever get to talk to that person, but I want to know why they did it. I want to know why they did it.